The four-star wide receiver out of Converse, Texas, Judson High School, Anthony Evans, has decommitted from the University of Oklahoma, flipped his commitment to the University of Georgia. We got to talk about it, break this down, and talk about where maybe Oklahoma could go from the receiver position now that they have lost Anthony Evans. But before we do that, please go ahead and hit the like and the subscribe button. Let me know what you guys are thinking about the loss of Anthony Evans for the Oklahoma Sooners. Do you think this is going to impact the class, or do you ultimately think this is going to make it stronger by being able to go out there and get a different player? So Anthony Evans has decommitted from the University of Oklahoma, and this is something that we kind of saw coming. The writing was on the wall, especially after Anthony Evans took that visit to the University of Georgia. I still thought it was a cool idea that he wanted to take his mom to a game, but ultimately, so far, Oklahoma has not done well with players wanting to take visits elsewhere and then being able to retain their commitments. I get it. I understand the policy that Brent Venables has, but he kind of has to start sticking to it a little bit. I get it. If they take an official and they have not clearly communicated that they are still all in, you have to be able to recruit above them. But you can't be getting down to the last couple of months in the recruiting cycle and now having players like this decommitting, because Anthony Evans was going to be able to come in and make a huge impact for the Sooners. So the question is, where do the Sooners go from here? Well, after the loss of Anthony Evans, you could try to lean back towards Mica Tease, the four-star athlete or wide receiver, whatever you want to call him, out of Booker T. Washington, Tulsa, Oklahoma. He's 5'11", 180 pounds, but this is somebody that the Sooners originally wanted and were actually recruiting to play as a defensive back. Now, listen, he could play at the Power 5 level at a wide receiver or a DB. So he has great size, physical tools, and he has a lean athletic build and the ability to add lots of body mass. So we know that Mica Tease could potentially be a good wide receiver. I think the staff would ultimately like him to play DB. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this offer. Do they offer him as a wide receiver, try to get him in the doors and flip him to a DB, or do they just try to cut it, pull him in as a wide receiver, and keep him there? The other option that they have is Jaden Greathouse, who is currently committed to the University of Notre Dame. The 6'2", 215-pound wide receiver from Austin Westlake has committed to the University of Notre Dame. This is somebody that the Sooners kind of really wanted, and I remember this specific recruitment pretty as of recently. Jaden Greathouse took a visit to the University of Texas, and there is a reason the Texas Longhorns should feel good about maybe getting him, as we have seen the Westlake kids potentially start ending up back home at Austin where they belong. And I believe flipping his commitment is going to be pretty hard. Being from the Westlake area, you would expect that Jaden has grown up a Longhorns fan. And if he has grown up a Longhorns fan, you would expect that if he is going to flip anywhere, it's going to be to Texas and maybe not to the University of Oklahoma. But ultimately, when you look at Jaden Greathouse, again, another guy that you believe that could start at the Power 5 level. And listen, he's really well developed. When you look at him, like, he just looks big. He's got good height. He's got good size. This is ultimately someone that when you see him and you see his athletic background, playing basketball and those things along with football, you look at him and go, yeah, that could be a guy that could be a star at the University of Oklahoma and ultimately will be a star in football. When you look at his career stats, he has 182 receptions for 3,100 receiving yards and 43 touchdowns. Those stats are pretty amazing. But the next wide receiver is not somebody that's currently ranked in the composite, someone that I think personally is being underlooked, and that is going to be the 6', 180-pound wide receiver out of Denton Guyer, Landon Sides. Now, Landon Sides, again, not a highly recruited guy, not in the composite, currently committed to Incarnate Ward. Here's the stats, though. This year, played in 11 games, had 47 receptions, over 1,000 yards receiving, averaging about 23 yards, and had 15 touchdowns. When you look at what he did on the rushing, he only had 2 carries, 12 yards. But when you look at what he was able to do just on the track and field front as well, I would say pretty similar to Anthony Evans. Anthony Evans' track time on the 100-meter was 10:27. Landon Sides did a 10:54 and a 10:98 in the spring of this year on the 100-meter. So when you look at Landon Sides, you look at his speed and go, pretty comparable to what Anthony Evans has. And he already has that chemistry built with Jackson Arnold. So you would be able to expect those two to come in and potentially be able to continue that chemistry, carry that over, and potentially cause some havoc throughout the Big 12 and other college football. Ultimately, this is a big loss for the Sooners, and you really have to start asking the questions about Brent Venables' policy and if he needs to really start considering trying to keep kids from committing if they're not actually committed, because this is the fourth recruit that has taken an official visit somewhere else and then decommitted from you not too soon thereafter. First one, you have Colton Vasek, you have Caleb Spencer, you have Ashton Cozart, and now you have Anthony Evans. Two of those are wide receivers, and so this is going to hurt. Does Oklahoma need to go out there and get a wide receiver coach? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But Oklahoma is going to have to find an option, and now they are going to be scrambling to find another wide receiver to kind of fill that position, as you would expect there to be some depth maybe leaving that wide receiver room this year. Maybe you got to pay Marvin Mims to stay. Maybe you got to put an NIL deal in front of him to stay. If he's not within the first 3 rounds, it's definitely possible. If he's within the first 3 rounds, then you have to really start contemplating whether or not you're going to be able to keep him. Outside of that, you can go to the portal and turn there. There's going to be lots of good options in the portal. But again, it's not something that you want to rely on. And sometimes if they're in the portal for a reason. So I'm not sure the Sooners are going to necessarily be relying on that. So go ahead and jump down in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think about the decommitment of Anthony Evans to the University of Georgia. How do you think this is going to impact the Sooners, and who should they go out there and get?